Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of The Fishing Teacher, and really appreciate you guys checking today's video out and spending some time with me. Guys, today I want to have just a chat with y'all. We're going to have a long chat today about how I prepare for a day on the water. It's like, if I'm going to go fishing, I don't care if it's for fun or if it's I'm filming or if it's I'm practice or for a tournament or going to a tournament. My system and my approach, how I plan out my day, or how I'm going to plan out my approach to the day that I'm going to spend on the water, and actually what happens when I get on the water. It's something that I've sort of refined over decades and decades of fishing. So what I want to do today is I want to talk you through how I get ready to go fishing, like the day before, and then what I do actually when I get to the water and on the water to try to locate fish as quick as I can. So this is something that everybody has their own little formula to do that, and I'm going to share with you guys today what's worked really good for me in that process. So we'll get into that in today's episode. Also, guys, just wanted to thank everybody out there, all you guys that have been using and bookmarking my Tackle Warehouse link that I have in each video description. Big thank you for me and my family. If you guys want to get stocked up on your spring tackle, you can go in there and use that link. It's a really good way to support the channel. And also, guys, please check out my Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns I built for Fish the Moment. If you guys are getting ready for spring fishing, this is a great resource to learn more about your favorite lakes. So I'll put all those links in the description of the video if you guys would like to check those out. Really appreciate that. Okay, what I'm going to share with you guys here is it's the accumulation of decades of mistakes that I have made getting to the point where I'm at now, where I'm pretty confident about any time that I go fishing that I'm going to catch some fish. So the system that I put together have come through a long, many years of trial and errors. And I just want to explain to you guys what works good for me and how I go about doing it. Okay, now let's say, for example, I've got a trip planned. Depending upon how busy I am, I used to have a lot more time than I do now. I'll begin thinking about that trip for days or even weeks ahead of the time. I sort of go over in my mind about what could possibly work, and I sort of mentally practice a little bit. And don't discount that right there, guys. When I talk about the term mentally practicing, that's a big deal, because you can sort of go through your mind about things you want to try and different options. And when I'm driving down the road, I may be, if I'm going to the lake a couple days later, I'll just go over and over in my mind about some things that could possibly work. So I start doing that. That's sort of my initial thing. I start thinking about the techniques that could work and the conditions. And then I start doing a little bit of research. I'll go online and I'll try to find out the latest information, like, what the lake level is, what the water clarity is, some general consensus if there's any fishing reports out there. Sort of try to get a feel for what's going on a little bit. There's a lot of groups like on Facebook that you can join about any lake out there, guys. Has like a Table Rock Lake Angler group or something like that. It's really good to join those because you can get a lot of up-to-date information on what's going on. Now, one of the things that I'll tell you about information is use it in a way that does not influence what you want to do. It's like it should be a bonus or a benefit to your plan, but don't become reliant or dependent upon what somebody else is doing. Because what I have found out in those lake reports, a lot of times, it can give you some general information, but most of the time, people hold back. They're not going to give you the juice. And a lot of the stuff that they talk about may or may not be working now. It may have been a situation. They may have been out there on a cloudy day and you're going out there on a sunny day. So what I'm saying is be really sort of aware of the fact that use what you can in that information, but don't get too locked into it. Just sort of use it as part of your overall game plan. So start doing that, and then after I start researching the lake, I always like to go and get back on Google Earth. Now, guys, Google Earth is a great resource to refresh yourself about how a lake lays out, even if you know the lake pretty good, because if you get the Google Earth app, you can actually scroll through the part of the lake that you're on, and you can actually go back in time and you can put it to different lake levels. They have that option on there. And you can find out like where all the visible cover's at. You can find out where docks are, where lay down trees are, where rocky banks are, rock transitions. You can see different water clarities in the lake. So that Google Earth really, really will help you sort of decide better, what you want to do or what type of area you're in. Okay, the next thing I do is I begin my tackle preparation. And there's a couple different ways that I have done this over the years. What I used to do is I used to pack specific boxes for where I'm going. Say, for example, if I was going to a lake where I thought there was going to be a lot of pitching and flipping going on, I'd pack a couple of boxes full of jigs and pitching and flipping baits. But anymore, I load my boat down. It's like I go over in my mind, it's like, what are all of the possible scenarios that could work here? Let's say, for example, if you and I were going to go to Table Rock Lake next week, there's a lot of things that could work. A jerk bait could work, different types and different styles of jerk baits. A spoon could work, a blade bait could work, a crank bait could work, a drop shot could work, a little swim bait could work. So I go over every single possible technique that could even remotely be used, and I'll pack those boxes in my boat. And when I get done, usually when I'm getting ready to go fishing, for fun or a tournament, there's no room in my compartments. They are completely packed full of tackle that I could possibly use. Now, the thing about this is, like, when you get out on the lake, the reason that this is important to do is when you get out on the lake, you have got, if something is unfolding or something, you encounter something maybe unexpected that you didn't know it was there, if you don't have the tools in your boat to capitalize on that, you're missing out on a prime opportunity. So I always try to really, really, put as much tackle as I can in the boat. Now, there's two sides to this way of thinking. The one side is that you load the boat down with a lot of tackle, and the other side is you limit your tackle to a handful of techniques, and you try to make those techniques work by expanding on the water. Now, I've done both, and this is what I found out. It's like, I want to have that tackle in the boat with me, but at the same time, I got to have the mental discipline not to just spend all my time digging through tackle. You've got to have that discipline to do that. So if we get out there and let's say we've identified a handful of techniques that we think could work, that's probably what I'm going to stay with. I'm going to stay with those handful of techniques unless something unexpected happens. Let's say, we're going out there and we're planning a jerkbait trip, and we know an A-rig, a jerkbait, a spoon, all the typical cold water baits could work. And then we get out there and all of a sudden we didn't realize, but there was a heavy rain down the lake 3 days ago, and the back of the creeks are dirty. Now, in that situation there, if I don't have like my shallow running crankbaits and a spinnerbait in the box, I can't take advantage of that. So that's why you got to pack for every possible scenario that's out there. But again, you have to have the discipline not just to spend all your time down in the bottom of the boat, changing your lures. Okay, so that's the preparation part of it. Now, on the way to the lake, when I'm driving to the lake, this is when I do a lot of really, really intense focus on what I want to do. On my trips to the lake, when I'm driving to the lake in the morning, I'm focusing on where I want to go that day, what I want to do, how I want to spend my time. I'm really, really thinking about that. And a lot of times I'm torn. And if you are the same way, guys, you're not alone. It's like if you're going to the lake and you can't really decide like what part of the lake you want to go to, or you can't really decide what techniques you want to try that day, you're not alone. That happens to all of us. But eventually you have to land on something, and you have to settle down with that. So what I try to do when I'm driving to the lake, I try to assess the condition. I look at the daylight, the sun, the forecast we're going to have that day with the light intensity and the wind and everything that goes along with it. And when I get to the lake, first thing I do is I want to look at that water temperature. And then after I determine the water clarity, the water temperature, the forecast, that determines where I want to fish that particular day. And usually I segment the lake into 3 different sections. When I go to a lake, I'm thinking in the lake in terms of 3 sections. So I only have 3 decisions to make. Do I want to fish the lower end of the lake, the mid part of the lake, or the upper end of the lake? That's the first consideration that I have to have. And usually what happens is when I make that decision, I will spend my entire day in that part of the lake. I don't like start way up the lake, up the river, and then all of a sudden they're not biting, and at 10 o'clock I want to drive down and put down in the lower end of the lake. Now, I have done that before. Say, for example, if I get up and I'm fishing up the river and I didn't realize that it was muddy or the cover wasn't there like I thought it was, and I'm not getting any bites whatsoever, then I may bail out. But as long as I feel that there's some potential in that particular area, I'm going to stay there all day long. And another good thing about learning to segment a lake and learning to divide the lake up in 3 sections, that takes a lot of the intimidation factor out, especially if you don't have a lot of experience in fishing or you don't have a lot of experience on the lake. So let's say that if we're on a 20,000 acre lake, instead of 20,000 acres, if we divide that lake into 3 sections, then effectively we have a 6,000 or 7,000 acre lake that we're fishing. And then within that 6,000 or 7,000 section acre of the lake, we can even narrow it down further to say, like, we're going to fish the back of the coves, or we're going to fish the, bluff banks, or we're going to fish, the gravel banks, whatever cover's available in that particular area. And then you narrow it down further and further and further. So the first thing that I'm looking for is, once I decide where I want to fish at, and once I get there, then I have to decide upon the technique. And the technique can be whatever could possibly work. And normally when I start out with something, it normally doesn't work out right off the bat. Excuse me. Normally I have to cycle through 2 or 3 different baits and fumble around a little bit before I start getting on the fish and figuring something out. And every second that you spend on the lake, either catching a fish or not catching a fish, you're getting closer to figuring it out. Don't get discouraged if you get out there and you haven't had a bite after 2 or 3 hours. Just keep changing, keep moving, and eventually you're going to start getting a few bites. But you have to go through this process of elimination, sometimes more than other times. Sometimes I've been out there and right off the bat I start catching them, and other times it's at the end of the day before I figure it out. So that's one of the things that you sort of have to accept, is you don't know when you're going to figure it out. Just keep telling yourself, it's just a matter of time and process of elimination. I'm going to keep looking for them and I'm going to find them. That's the mentality that you have to have with it. So, and that, like I said, once you do get out on the water and you try to figure out how to catch those fish, that gets back to the challenge that every single angler has to have, or has every day, is to figure out what those fish are doing and what they want. And it's usually always something simple, because I don't know how many times that I've been fishing and I've come in and it's just been terrible. I haven't caught anything. And I'll talk to a friend of mine. It's like, oh, we whacked them today. And I found out they were doing something completely different, but it's really simple. It's usually never, ever anything complicated, the way that they're catching them. I may have spent my day flipping and pitching a jig against the bank, and they may have fished the same banks, but they used a spinnerbait or a crankbait. And it's just the mood and the personality of the fish that particular day was more conducive to the way they were fishing than the way I was fishing. And finally, one other thing, guys, one of the things that you have to determine, and this is so important when you get on the lake, is you have to decide and figure out if those fish are in a chasing mood or a non-chasing mood. When you're talking about figuring out the best lures to use and the best approach, that is the 2 questions you have to ask yourself every time, and always think in those terms. Did the fish want to chase, or did the fish want to get tucked down and stay on the bottom? And that will determine if you need to use a slow bottom bait like a Ned rig or a jig or whatever, or a moving bait that goes through the water column like a chatterbait or a spinnerbait or a crankbait. So always think in terms of that bass mood and personality. So that's just the way I go about it, guys. That's just a broad example of how I go about my day on the water when I'm getting there. And more than not, it works for me. I mean, I'm not saying it works every single time, because you're never going to be successful in fishing every time. Nobody is, because there's too many variables out there. Fish move around, they change. There's an aspect of bass that we don't understand, which is great. We don't ever want to understand them all, because then it's no fun anymore. But that's just a few things that's worked for me. So anyway, I hope it helps you guys out. We'll talk later.